Hey guys, let's do a quick chat about project expectations. So we process about 700 pieces a week through our studio, sometimes more in the busier months like in the winter. And it is incredibly important for the studio to be able to maintain a sense of consistency with all of the projects. And there's a couple different reasons for that. So I just wanted to show everybody, and hopefully this will help, all of these rules that we have about our projects make a little bit more sense to you so you can remember in the future. So the first thing I want to talk about is writing the names on the work. Now, the students are not allowed to write their own names. I don't care how old they are. If they think they have beautiful handwriting, it makes it difficult for me to read if a student does not have quite as good handwriting. So I need all of my teachers to be the ones that are writing the names on the projects. Now, the placement of the name is very important as well. So when we are writing on wet clay, we need to write the name on the side instead of the bottom. And so the reason for this is if I'm writing my name, Alyssa, on the bottom of this, and then this piece is going to go, it's going to sit in the plastic bin for, a week probably before it comes back to the studio. And as it sits there and gets kind of moved around, by the time I get it, because the weight has been pressing the name down, I can't read half of the names that are on here. So whenever we are working on projects, it's extremely important that we are writing it on the side of the work. When we're writing the names, remember, you need to write the student's first name, their full first name. If it's a long first name, it can be shortened as long as it's understandable, like Alex is short for either Alexander or Alexandra. That's okay. I would ask the student, of course, if they have a shorter name. Do not put nicknames on here, because these kids sometimes will have nicknames that have nothing to do with their name. And then if their piece gets misplaced, I don't know what box to put it back in. None of the Kiln Techs do, because we don't actually know these students. So we don't know that, Katie's nickname is Ella B. We have it doesn't always make sense or correlate like that. So it needs to be their actual name on there. And then we need to put their last initial, because out of 700 kids, you will have, look at these cute little fingers. This is my son walking in. Out of 700 kids, you will have many students that have the same first name. So you always want to have that first name, full first name, and then the last initial on the side. The only caveat to that, to writing on the bottom, is if you have a slab piece. So we do a slab piece once a session. We always do a coil pot, a type of pinch pot, and then a slab. And that just means flat. This is the only exception for writing on the bottom, because you would have a really hard time writing on, that part right there. And in that type of situation, we would be writing as large as we could, giving me and our technicians the best chance of reading this name after half of it gets smushed off. So, I'm Alyssa B. I would write it just as big as I could. So if this part right here gets kind of blurry, hopefully I can still make out what the rest of it is and figure out whose name that is. So that's the only exception for the names being written on the bottom. Another incredibly important issue here is that the pieces be the same size as the example. So when you give a student a ball of clay, they're all going to get the same sized ball of clay. Everyone's going to get a size about this. It should fit right in their hand. I mean, here, my son's still in here. I can show you. Let me borrow your hand, bub. So this is his little hand. Oh, that is so cute. This is the appropriate size of clay for them, meaning that when they're done, their piece should be about the same size. See how that fits? That's about the same size. That is a little bit larger. I think we had too much clay on that example. This guy, about the same size. So nothing should be, we shoot to have it be the size of the palm of the hand in like circumference. So when we're talking about putting stuff on a kiln shelf, we only have room for 25 pieces on a kiln shelf that are about this circumference. So it being taller is not the issue. It being wider is the issue. So this takes up, square footage of the same amount almost as this little guy right here almost as this guy right here. So everything needs to be the same size. Sometimes kids will end up collecting extra clay from other people and wanting to add to it. That's not something that we can do because number one, it's not fair to the other students, but then number two, you end up having a piece that's too big and then they don't all fit on the same shelf. And then that's a problem because it has to get put with another class and then there's a chance it doesn't come back to that class. So that's very important. Another important rule when we are working with our clay is if the student has extra clay, they will ask you every single time. They'll ask you, can I keep it? Sometimes they'll even try and hide it in their hand. Can I keep it? Can I take it home? You cannot. And there are two reasons. One, clay is very expensive and we need to recycle it. So it comes back to the studio and we put it through the pug mill and we're able to reuse it and send it out for another class. But number two is when this clay dries, it's going to crumble. Remember how we were watching the mats earlier? We were seeing all of these little tiny dry pieces and that releases a chemical, silica, and it's very harmful for you to breathe. It can cause silicosis and it's very dangerous. So when this clay does not go into the kiln, it's going to turn to ash and that's dangerous to breathe. So you always tell your students, no, you cannot, we need to recycle it, use it for another class, blah, blah, blah. Generally, you know, that works. Another important thing is to remember the students can only make one project, period. Kids will have extra clay and they will say, well, I'm going to make a little kitty cat. So say they made this guy right here and they say, oh, I want to make a little kitty cat. If you want to use your extra clay to make more, that's totally fine, but it needs to be connected to this piece. They cannot come back to my studio as two separate pieces. This will get thrown away. It absolutely will because it gets lost, misplaced. If you want to make a little kitty cat, you're going to have to literally attach it to this so that that is now one piece. We're pretending that's a cat instead of a blob. So another thing that we need to talk about is when you are stacking. So we don't ever stack things like this. That will be squished. Gravity will crush this. You don't stack that. The one thing that you can stack in your bin is your slab pieces. Again, that's our flat pieces right here. When you are stacking them, please remember to use paper towels to separate them because wet clay on top of wet clay gets a little bit sticky. Not sticky enough to stay forever and not separate, but sticky enough to ruin the piece and rip some of the pieces off when I separate it. So when you put down this first layer, you need to cover that layer with a paper towel. Then you can put a second layer on top of that. I wouldn't do more than 3 layers because the weight, the gravity of that will crush the pieces on the very bottom. So those are most of our expectations regarding our wet clay. Now, when we have glaze days, we have a few different expectations for this. The first thing is every session, the students are going to get a chance to paint this bisque mug. Now that means this has been fired. This is made in a factory in China. We buy it from a company. They import it over. The students get to use this. It's fantastic. Now, what will happen with this piece is if you are writing on the bottom of this, so you have to write the names on the bottom of this. It is hard. You can't carve into this. You have to write this with a Sharpie. Now, if you write this with a marker, say like a Crayola marker or something that's washable like this, what's going to happen is the moisture in this with all of the glaze, the moisture is going to cause it to bleed like this. I will not be able to read it. Not only will it bleed, it will weirdly go through backwards to the inside. I don't quite understand how that works, but it happens. So you need to always be writing on the bottom of your bisque where you're writing your student's name. So Sophia L, it needs to be written in a Sharpie because a Sharpie with the moisture is not going to rub off. If you are in an absolute pinch, like you can't find your Sharpie, you've lost it, whatever, because we do give you guys Sharpies, we do have extras, but you guys go through them so quickly. Sometimes you just don't have one. You can use a colored pencil. You cannot use a regular pencil. I don't know why. You just can't. It will rub off. This one, not so much. The wet paper towel will kind of smudge it a little bit, but it doesn't really rub off. A regular pencil will wipe off. While we were talking about that, you need to remind your students when they are painting their bisqueware, when they are painting their mug, anything that is not glaze on here will burn off in the kiln. So some kids will be like, well, I want to draw a beautiful flower on here, and they'll draw a flower with their pencil because we have lots of pencils. And they think that when they get it back, it's going to look like this. It will not. This will be gone. When they get it back, it will look like this. So nothing except for the clay and the glaze is going to make it through the kiln. Everything else is going to burn off. So that's pretty important for them to know that. Speaking of glaze, I've got some right here. So let's talk about our rules for glazing. So when our students are glazing, this is a project, it's probably one of the most favorite projects, but unfortunately it's a really quick project for most students. So they will do this and they will say, okay, I'm done. And then you have 45 minutes of class left where they just want to like run around and be like wild childs, right? So I always tell my students, I want you to go back in. I want you to cover all of the white spots unless it is intentionally left white. So if you are painting this, you want it to look like a Dalmatian. So you want your mug to be all white with a couple of black spots all over it. Okay, that's fine. Leave that part white if it's intentional. Otherwise, you need to take your time, slow down, go in and cover up all these little white spots right here. In the end, it keeps the students working longer and it also makes their piece look a lot better. The students need to have 2 coats of glaze. So if you only do 1 coat of this, it's going to be very translucent. You can see how where it's drying right there. You can already see the white in the background. So 2 coats mean they paint all of it once, and then they go in and they paint on top of it a second time. So it's very, very important. They can also paint on the inside. In fact, I encourage and ask all of them to paint completely on the inside as well. Another important thing with glazing is you don't want to glaze on the bottom. Now, it is going to happen, like a student's going to be glazing like this and a little bit's going to get on the bottom like that. That is all right. We will wipe that off. However, if a student is intentionally flipping this over and painting the bottom, what happens is this part right here, this rim is what touches the kiln shelf. It sits on the kiln shelf like that. And this glaze, as it melts in the kiln to vitrify, it will literally fuse this to my shelf and I have to like break it off with a hammer. So I do wipe all of it to make sure, but the more that they put on the bottom, the harder it is for me to get all of it off and the greater the chances that it's going to get stuck to the kiln. And then they're not going to have a piece in the end. So that's always really, really, really sad. I think that's pretty much it for all of our project reminders here. Just remember, as the clay goes through its stages, it's going to start out as wet clay like this. They're going to build their project. It will look like this when they're done. We will put it into the kiln. It will come back out of the kiln looking just like this, except it will be white and nice and hard. It will no longer be plasticky like this. It will have this consistency, kind of scratchy, hard, and this is what we call bisque. Once it's bisqued like this, the students can go in and glaze it. This is our glaze right here. It's very, very specialized. It is only for pottery. No, you cannot use regular paint. You cannot borrow some of the art teacher's acrylic paint or gesso paint or anything because that will ruin the piece. You can only use glaze when you're painting pottery. It's also very expensive, so we always try and encourage our students, hey, don't paint on paper with it. Don't waste it in any other way because it's a very, very expensive product for us to buy. Once it's done being glazed, you'll see it's not shiny when it's glazed. It needs to go back through the kiln one more time. It needs to be fired that last time. And then once it's fired and it comes back out, it's going to be this shiny, just like that. So that's the difference. Unfired glazed work, fired glazed work, nice and shiny.